you, Cahill. Minister, we had the budget on Tuesday, and there was an extreme disappointment that no new low-cost loan scheme for farmers was introduced. There's a serious cash flow crisis out there and huge merchant debt building up. The co-ops and private merchants can't afford to carry this merchant debt going forward, and farm families are under extreme financial pressure. And what plans has the Minister got to introduce a new low-cost loan scheme?
Thank you very much, Deputy Cabinet Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. In his budget speech, my colleague, the Minister for Finance and Public Expenditure and Reform, Pascal Donoghue TD, formally announced the progress in relation to the development of a key government Brexit response to future growth loan scheme for SMEs, including the primary agriculture and seafood sectors. This is a long-awaited source of finance for young and new entrant farmers, especially the cohorts who do not have high levels of security. It will also serve smaller-scale farmers who often do not have the leverage to negotiate for more favourable terms with their banking institution. Food companies have identified long-term investment finance of up to 10 years as a critical need, which is currently unavailable in Ireland. I'm pleased that the government have been able to deliver this product, and its effects will be felt all along the food production chain. My department is providing 40% of the funding, so an overall agri-food package of €120 million will be available. However, unlike previous schemes, this can be reviewed and adjusted according to demand. Further details will be provided in the coming months. The scheme is expected to be in place in early 2019 and will run for 3 years from its launch date. The funding required to prime this measure will be paid by my department in 2018. In relation to cash flow pressures arising from the effects of the weather on grazing and fodder stocks, the agreement I secured from Commissioner Hogan to make higher advance payments this autumn will result in a very substantial €260 million in additional cash flow for farmers shortly. I've had ongoing engagement with the banks in this regard, and I'm pleased to see that this engagement and the delivery of last year's agriculture cash flow loan scheme has acted as a catalyst to encourage financial institutions to improve and develop new products for the sector. A recently announced initiative by one of the main banks mirrors the scheme in offering a discounted interest rate with extended and flexible repayment terms. All three main banks have dedicated offerings in response to the current situation. Co-ops have introduced recent initiatives on credit facilities to their suppliers. A spending review of the agricultural cash flow loan scheme published with the budget concluded that this was one of the main impacts of that scheme. In the context of these new and improved supports in this area, the focus of the government has been to address market gaps, the most critical of which has been identified as unsecured longer-term investment finance.
Minister, thanks for your response, but I think you're missing the point I'm making, Minister. And to renege your responsibility in this area to the banks just isn't satisfactory. The people out there who want this money the worst will not get it from the banks. 2 years ago, we had a loan scheme introduced in the budget which was most welcome. But again, that time around, the people who were under the most financial pressure didn't get those loans from the banks. And the banks offered them to their better customers. If we think that the banks are going to step in and help the people who are under the most pressure here, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. One of the milk co-ops introduced a flexi milk loan scheme a month or 6 weeks ago, and the demand that was followed there was phenomenal. Unfortunately, the appetite for credit out there at the moment among farmers, the need for credit is absolutely immense. We've had, I suppose, one of the longest winters on record with huge costs. We've had a summer where huge costs were incurred as well. And unfortunately, this winter, there's going to be a significant increase in the level of costs on farms as well. So farmers out there, whether it's pig farmers, beef farmers, dairy or tillage, there's absolutely a huge demand for short-term credit. We've also got a section of farmers who invested very heavily in their businesses, and they're under extreme pressure to meet their repayments as well. So there is a short-term fix required here, Minister, and the banks won't solve it. And Minister, you cannot renege on your responsibility to the various sectors. And short-term credit at low cost has got to be provided.
Thank you,
if these sectors are going to be kept sustainable.
Minister, 1 minute.
Thank you, Deputy. I think the challenge is when the state is putting in money, is it getting value for that money? And I think the report that was published with the budget on the €150 million low-interest loan working capital scheme clearly showed that it was value for money, but that it had also delivered in terms of generating other competition in the finance sector for working capital. So that begs the question, in terms of getting value for money for further initiatives with taxpayers' money. I believe it would be a mistake, therefore, to repeat that kind of scheme when the market is already delivering a similar type of product already in terms of working capital. And the gap in the market that now exists is not for working capital, because all the indications are that that's available. The gap in the market that's there now is for longer term, and by longer term I mean over 7 years, so 8 to 10 year money at unsecured borrowing. At interest rates that are very competitive, and the product we're bringing out will meet all of those challenges in terms of unsecured borrowing, less than 5% over 8 to 10 years for capital investment. The working capital side has been addressed by the 150 million, but more importantly, it has also generated further competition in that area.
Thank you. Final comments, Deputy Cahill.
Minister, I'm not going to knock the initiatives that you've made here are welcome, but there is a serious amount of farmers out there that cannot get access to the credit they need. That's the factual situation. A lot of farmers have a very significant tax bill to pay at the end of this month, and the cash flow just isn't there to do it. So there is a problem there. And I suppose another issue in this year's budget, Minister, was there was no attempt to address volatility and the fact that farmers, with the swings that can be in farmers' income, the huge problem there is as regards tax bills in a year where income is down very substantially and they have to pay tax on a previous year where income was a lot higher. And there was grave disappointment by all the farming organisations that there was no attempt in this year's budget to address that problem. And that is a serious problem for farm families. Volatility and the income tax, the huge income tax bills that can arise in a year like this when incomes and costs are running very, very high. So, Minister, there is a problem out there as regards short-term credit. There is a problem as regards volatility. And unfortunately, the budget didn't deliver on either of these two key issues.
Thank you.
But, Minister, there is a need. There is farmers out there who can't get access to credit, and they, unfortunately, are the ones that need it most.
Thank you, Deputy. Final comment, Minister.
Deputy, I have to disagree. I mean, the tax measures in the budget actually will benefit farmers who have income difficulties with volatility, because the income averaging arrangement has been further tweaked to allow those farmers who have an off-farm income, either themselves or their spouse have an off-farm income, to be able to avail of the opt-out. And that will benefit a substantial cohort of farmers who presently are excluded from that income averaging, the purpose for which was to address volatility issues. So it's not the case to say that there was no acknowledgement of the challenges around income averaging. On the issue around financial products, I don't think we will ever agree on this, but I think that the challenge for us is, if you have some money to spend, are you replicating something with taxpayers' money that's already in the market, and therefore in a way not delivering something new, because the product will not be delivered. Farmers won't apply to the Department of Agriculture for this working capital, they apply to the pillar banks. If you're not delivering something new, is it not the case then that if it's already in the market without state support, that you could use that money better for other things? Things like, for example, the investment finance, or indeed ANC payments or beef initiative.